Warning, this podcast contains heavy spoilers for not just one movie, but entire franchises. We highly recommend going and watching these movies before listening to us as a companion piece that stitches all the timelines into one creepy, crime-ridden story. There will be no more spoiler warnings. We do not break character. After this, there is no turning back. You've been warned. Hit the music.
You are talking about the nonsensical ravings of a lunatic mind.
It's alive! It's alive! It's alive! It's alive! It's alive! It's alive!
Hello, freaks and fiends, and welcome to It's Alive podcast. This is a true crime, paranormal, interstellar podcast covering unbelievable stories that sound like they were ripped straight from the pages of a Hollywood script. I am your host, the outlaw, Dr. H.R. Smokenstein, THC, and with me, as always, is my very own Scream Queen, the perfect combination of beauty and brains, the bride of Smokenstein, the India horror, the expert, the guts and gore, the sexy, the gorgeous, the sexy, or the sexy and gorgeous, Amy Rose.
Hi.
You know the way it works.
I wouldn't have been mad if you left out gorgeous. Just letting you know, you look like you panicked.
And today we are we're dealing with a broken system, a fractured mind, and a lot of corruption. And that's not the episode content. That's why we're late.
I was just
Corrupted
about to say
files,
it.
systems of technology that refuses to work with me and my fractured mind from dealing with all of this shit.
Way to promote the episode.
No, I'm talking about the fucking equipment, not the episode.
Okay,
the episode
cool.
is fine. The episode is great. The episode
Solid
is...
episode.
The reason my mind was also fractured was because there was a lot of information that I had not accounted for when I started talking about Sawyers that suddenly started spewing out of my brain, and here it is.
Yeah.
But on the upside, again, obviously, for anybody that's looking at this in the future, they will see it on our timeline as if we released this last Wednesday.
Because we're time travelers.
But for everybody else, this is double bubble week for you,
Yep.
because let alone do we have this episode, the next episode is ready to go and will be out in time. So, yeah. So with that being said, let's get cracking with what might be one of our more ambitious stories in a long, long while.
Okay. So when we last spoke about Robert Chop Top Sawyer, it was the late 1980s. He had been deemed criminally insane and committed to the William Moseley Institute for the Criminally Insane, where he became the subject of a series of interviews that would later be known as the Robert Sawyer tapes. In those recordings, Sawyer spoke in detail about the history of his family, offering what investigators believed to be their best chance at understanding the events that the media had come to label as the Texas Chainsaw Massacres. And for the first time, the myth had a voice.
But see, this is kind of where I come in with the whole fucking idea of why I'm against the death penalty. Because you and me were talking not long ago about like people who deserve, like you were looking at, like, especially every time I bring up BTK, you flinch and you're just like, fuck that guy, he should be dead. And I keep having to point out, it's like there is advantages to keeping these people alive.
There are, but I think you should put a stipulation of, right, you're getting the death penalty in 10 years' time after we've studied your brain, because I don't agree with the fact that a lot of serial killers like to talk about their killings. They like the attention from their killings. So bringing them a psychiatrist into a room or whoever into the room to talk to them about their killings, they're getting off on it again.
But the thing about it is, I mean, it's the same as the Rex Horman stuff this week. The only reason he pled guilty was because death penalty
That
is taken
should
off
not
the
be
table.
allowed.
But then you're never going to get the information out of them. And if you do, it's not reliable information, because if you tell me that as soon as the information I give you is going to dry up, you're going to kill me, then I'm going to start making up new information, aren't I? I'm going to start admitting you're going to get a Henry Lee Lucas situation.
Not necessarily, because BTK doesn't like talking about other people's crimes.
But if he thought you were going to kill him once he finished talking about him, he probably would.
Okay, that's true.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
The whole kind of the deal there is, we'll give you this if you give us that. And the idea is that while you're looking at it in the point of view of, oh, well, they're getting off on talking about it again, the real side of it is, right, fair enough, this person, BTK, might be enjoying himself talking about his killings, but what he's telling us will allow us to make sure that another BTK never fucking happens. Because next time one of them kicks up, we have the advantage.
Yeah.
We know what's going through your head. We know what steps to take to prevent you and catch you and fucking knock you out. You know?
Yeah. Yeah.
It's intentional, you know?
Yeah.
I mean, apparently with Rex Horman, like, part of, like, what they were doing was they were intentionally not talking about him as much in the media. The Long Island serial killer.
Yeah, you get very little coverage.
That case was huge in 2011 when I first heard about it. And he had been going since the 90s. And then suddenly there was nothing. And apparently the reason there was nothing was they were hoping he would do what BTK did.
And be like, have you forgotten about me, lads?
No. The opposite. That he'd go almost into semi-retirement. He'd just fall back. And as long as he wasn't killing, they had time to start fucking trying to break down the information they had and the leads they had and follow him around. And because obviously Rex Horman, that's a pretty fucking... you get a description of a guy like that as soon as he walked in the door. It's like, it has to be him. Mm-hmm. I mean, as soon as they put him up in front of us, it was like, well, that dude's guilty.
That's absolutely.
And, when you get the descriptions of what the Long Island serial killer was supposed to look like, it was like, that's him.
That's your ogre.
Like, and then his car on top of it was identical. It was a very specific car, and it stood out. So, I mean, this is how stuff like Mindhunter happens, and not the TV show, but the book. The book that, he went to interview all these serial killers to learn from them, and so that we could understand how their minds worked, what was the cause, how could we stop it.
And usually I have no problem with that. I understand it, and but it's for really, really fucking extreme cases like BTK that I think, or just blind them a tiny bit and let them talk afterwards.
See,
blind him and do exactly to him what he did to his victims.
You can't have one set of rules for one people and another set of rules
but
for the other.
But it depends on the severity of it. I mean...
Doesn't matter. If they feel that way, especially in America where they have the death penalty, if they feel that way, they're just going to give you the death penalty. If they have enough evidence and they've already settled the case and they know what they're looking for, they're going to come after you one way or another. But the problem is, I mean, you see that with Charles Manson and stuff like that, and we'll be talking a lot about him today. But just in that sense of, this is where the advantages come in. We wouldn't know. We wouldn't have just done 5 episodes on the Sawyers if one of them wasn't sit there singing like a fucking canary.
That's
would we?
very true.
So we need that information.
We have a bit of advantage from that.
So you need that information.
Yeah.
You need to know what's going through their mind. And the point of the matter is that they're behind walls, heavily guarded walls for the rest of their fucking life. So it's not like they have a good quality of life. It's not like they get to interact with other people. It's not like they get to live in regular civilized society.
But they still have a quality of life to some degree.
They do, but I still think it's better to have them there. And plus, really, is a death penalty worth it if you're going to make a mistake? Even if you you might get a BTK every now and again. But what about the people who get fucked over by the system?
No, I would agree with that. But then, I mean, I agree with you there. But then, I mean, if you look at alternatives, and I mean, like really harsh solitary confinement, blah, blah, blah. If you get the wrong person with that as well, that's going to psychologically damage them. Do you know what I mean? Just because the death penalty is off, would be off the table and there would be no mistakes, as in you're not executing the wrong person. You're still fucking up somebody else's life if you get it wrong.
Yeah, but you can there's still a chance of retribution. The system isn't perfect, but at least you're still alive. At least you have a chance to fix stuff. Death is final.
Yeah. No.
Done, it's over, it's finished. Full stop. You don't learn anything else from something from a corpse.
That's true.
Not unless you're a medical student and you want to find out the cause of death.
No.
So, yeah.
So Sawyer remained at Moseley for over a decade, in fact, 12 years in total. And during that time, he was interviewed extensively by psychiatric specialists and law enforcement, all working towards the same goal, closing cold cases and understanding how an entire family had descended into organized, ritualistic violence. But Sawyer was never a stable subject, not physically and not mentally. By 1986, he was finally taken into custody. His body had already been pushed far beyond normal limits. A war injury had left him with a steel plate embedded in his skull, surrounded by a wound that he refused to allow to heal. He had suffered a brutal attack at the hands of Venita Stretch Brock during the events at Texas Battleland, leaving him with a severe stomach wound that he barely survived. And that was before the fall from the top of the roller coaster, which was a drop that should have killed him, but it didn't.
So what you're left with is a man who shouldn't have survived and now has to live inside what's left of that body. And I can relate.
Mm-hmm.
The funny thing, you kind of get used to pain faster than you think you will.
Yeah.
No, admittedly, I've never been chainsawed off a roller coaster, so he's probably worse off than me. But at least we know he deserves it.
Yeah.
You know? So, I mean, there's that. So, you get some retribution here. He was sore. He wasn't happy.
I'm sore a fucking week every month.
How
Fuck him.
many people have you been killing?
1 a month. So the result was constant pain, debilitating and unrelenting. Doctors attempted to repair the damage. Skin grafts were performed to cover the exposed metal, a metal plate. Sawyer was physically restrained for weeks at a time to allow the wounds to heal, but the damage ran deeper than anything that they could treat. The pain never left him. It limited his movement, restricted his body, and slowly began to reshape his behavior.
And that's the thing. Pain like that doesn't just wear you down physically. It changes how you think, how you react. More than that, the pain medication can mess you up worse than the pain itself. Mentally, I mean, all those opioids, they don't just dull your pain, they dull your brain with it. Take it from someone who's been there. Like I said, I've dealt with the pain side of things, but after close to 6 years of heavy pain meds, it took me a year, I reckon, after I cut them out of my life completely for my brain to go back to logical thinking.
Yeah.
You're not thinking straight, you're paranoid, you're confused, reckless at times even.
Yeah.
No, for me, that was obviously at a very lower level. But when you already take someone who is paranoid, confused, and reckless and add opioids on top of that, you get doubly paranoid.
It's a shit trade-off, really.
and reckless. You can't fucking win.
No. And because of his volatility, Sawyer spent the majority of his incarceration in isolation, separated from the general population for the safety of other inmates, alone with nothing but his thoughts. And over time, those thoughts began to turn, not outward, but inward.
And that's where this really starts. Not just with what he did, but with what he lost.
For most of his life, Sawyer had existed as part of something, a family, a structure, a system that, while brutal and violent, gave him purpose. At Moseley, that was gone, replaced with silence, routine, and distance. He didn't just miss freedom, he missed belonging.
And that's the key difference. This guy's in his mid-50s at this point, right? Retirement isn't what he has in mind. He wants freedom, but not to ride off into the sunset, never to be seen again. And definitely the sunset this time, not the sunrise. It's to add to the legacy. That's what he wants to do. He wants to add to the myth, and in some ways to outdo what had come before him. All while at the same time honoring them as well. He's kind of like a walking, talking contradiction. It's hard to kind of pin down really what this guy wanted, but he wanted to be. He wanted to stand on his own while still being a Sawyer at heart.
And that sense of loss began to show in the interviews. At first, Sawyer cooperated, like he spoke, shared details, engaged with investigators. But as the years went on, that changed. The information slowed and then stopped. Sessions became unpredictable, sometimes silent, sometimes violent. And instead of insight, he began to speak in rhetoric, in anger, in threats. He claimed that what had already happened was nothing, that the Texas Chainsaw Massacre was only a beginning and that something far worse was coming.
Yeah, these guys have no slowdown setting. You see it with all serial killings. The cooling off period happens, after each kill, right?
Yeah.
But they get shorter and shorter. Bodies show up with more frequency until they're essentially in a frenzy kill mode. It's like a drug. At first, a small hit will get you high, but then eventually you need multiple hits to feel the same buzz you did the first time you did, and eventually you need mass quantities So you're essentially spending your entire fucking life chasing the original first high that you got, and you can never really find it again. And serial killers, it's exactly the same way.
Yeah.
They get this adrenaline rush, this fucking massive boost from their first killing. And after that, the more they do it, the more they need it.
Yeah.
It's an addiction.
Exactly.
And it's not hitting the same way as the first time because they're getting desensitized to it every time they do it.
Yeah. And during this period of isolation, Sawyer became increasingly fixated on the writings and philosophies of cult leaders, most notably Charles Manson. He studied how Manson had built a following, how he had manipulated people, and how he created a family out of outsiders.
But he wasn't interested in copying Manson's ideology. He was interested in the method, the drugs, the crimes that tied the family together. And if you want to know more about all that, then you can go over to It's Alive. No, you can go over to the Horrorverse Network.
Go over to
Well, It's Alive Pod is the fucking Instagram handle, and that's what I'm usually saying. So I mixed up my two handles.
Good plug, though.
But either way, you can go check out It's Alive Action on the Horrorverse Headlines, where we talk all about Manson and the idea that maybe Helter Skelter might have been more of
something different.
A story that was told by the prosecution to ensure that this madman stayed locked up, even though the reasons behind it were more along the of what he was doing was more along the lines of implicating people in crime so that he himself couldn't get in trouble for his own crimes.
So because Manson saw himself as an artist in music, Sawyer saw something else entirely. He had always been drawn to a more physical kind of form of creation. Alongside his brother Nubbins, he had taken part in grave robbing and what could only be described as experimentation with human remains, not just killing, but shaping.
Yeah, violence isn't just function for Robert, it's expression. Where Manson thought the world owed him something, Sawyer had no delusions about what he was, on a monster level. But he did feel underappreciated in the same way Manson did.
In his mind, these weren't acts of brutality. There were works, projects, pieces of something greater. He believed that what he created would one day be understood, that it would be appreciated, even if that appreciation came long after he was gone.
Well, that's because he knew he'd go down in history as one of the most vile humans to ever live.
Yeah.
But in his head, 100 years from now, his messed up murder art will be displayed in museums. Essentially, he'd live forever through his work. And to be fair, probably isn't wrong.
No.
You
And unlike Manson, Sawyer had no interest in race wars or ideology on a global scale. The Sawyers had never operated on those lines, not out of tolerance, but out of indifference. To them, people were not divided by race or belief. They were divided by use.
Yeah, the Sawyers were a lot of things, but racist they were not. They hated everyone equally. Where we see black, white, brown, yellow, red, they saw it through consumer eyes. To them, it was the same as us looking at animals and thinking beef, chicken, pork.
Sawyer didn't want to lead the world. He didn't want power in that sense. What he wanted was a family, a system, a structure that allowed him to create, to shape, and to perform. He saw violence not just as a necessity, but as spectacle and as theatre. And from inside Moseley, that vision remained just that, a vision, something out of reach and something he could not act on.
Until along came a doctor with no morals and new ideas.
After 12 years inside the institution, after years of pain, isolation, and silence, a call came in, a transfer request. A controversial physician based out of Willows County Hospital in Rugsville claimed that he could do what others could not. He could ease Sawyer's pain, restore his body, and more importantly, get him talking again. With cases still unsolved and victims still unidentified, authorities approved the transfer. It was a risk, but one that they were willing to take.
And this is where everything shifts, because for the first time, someone isn't trying to contain him. In fact, it was the complete opposite. This man wanted Chop Top in all his guts and glory.
And the doctor's name was Dr. S. Quentin Quayle.
But that's not the name history remembers, because in time, he would become known as something else entirely. Dr. Satan. Yeah.
Dr. S. Quentin Quayle did not come from prestige. He earned his medical degree from a school in the Caribbean, an institution often regarded as a fallback for those unable to secure placements in more competitive programs across the United States or Canada. He specialized in brain surgery and neurology with additional study in mental health and psychiatry. On paper, his qualifications were solid, but his opportunities were not. After graduating, Quayle struggled to find work. Hospitals passed on him, positions dried up, and instead of forcing his way into a system that clearly didn't want him, he stepped outside it. He chose to travel and to gain experience.
Yeah, not the Doctors Without Borders kind either.
No.
This isn't a man going out to help people. This is a man who just got told he's not good enough, and, turns out, though, that he was very good at what he does. That's kind of the problem here.
Yeah.
Just what he does isn't exactly standard practice in the medical world.
But it got results. So Quayle didn't go where young doctors typically go. He didn't volunteer in war zones. He didn't work in struggling communities. Instead, he deliberately sought out places where medicine blurred into belief. He traveled to Haiti, to parts of South America where ritual, faith, and unregulated practice overlapped. And from there, he moved into Asia, searching for underground procedures and experimental techniques that existed far outside any recognized medical standard.
Yeah, he's not learning medicine at this point, is he? He's just shopping around. Look for anything the textbooks told him not to touch. This is like a Star Wars story, really. The disgruntled potential Jedi finds out that the mentors have been holding back on him, and the power of the dark side can open doors to a lot more power and ability, but it all comes at a price.
There are no verified records of what he did during this time, only fragments like notes and references in journals that surfaced later. But what is clear is that when he returned to the United States, he was no longer interested in conventional medicine.
Of course he wasn't. You don't go digging around in that world and come back wanting to do routine checkups. No. This guy isn't he's not handing out shots and lollipops or working 24-hour shifts in the A&E, and that's the ER for you American audience. There's a difference. Casualty for the Brits.
Oh yeah.
He's been to the other side. He's seen the potential. Quayle and Sawyer are two sides of the same coin. Their ambitions match each other. The base goals might be slightly different, but the end result is the same. Infamy in their chosen field.
In his writings, Quayle outlined theories that went beyond treatment. He didn't want to fix the mind. He wanted to alter it, to reshape it, and to push it beyond its natural limits. He spoke about turning ordinary men into something else, stronger, more violent, and more focused.
Which is always how these lads sell it. Improvement, enhancement. No one goes in to support a monster maker.
For years, he experimented, working on inmates with no family ties, men close to death, people who wouldn't be missed. But despite his efforts, he failed. He couldn't replicate what he was chasing.
Because what he's looking for isn't something you build. It's something that's already there, You can't create monsters in a lab, you find them. All he could really do is make them sharper, stronger, more dangerous. Yeah.
And then he heard the recordings, the Robert Sawyer tapes, and immediately he was drawn in, not just by the crimes, but by the mind behind them.
Because Sawyer, he isn't broken in the way Quayle's other subjects were. He's functional. He knows what he is. That's a completely different animal from the near catatonic lunatics Quayle usually dealt with.
Yeah, and Quayle didn't know at first whether he wanted to study Sawyer or to use him. But he knew one thing. He needed access. Using every connection he had, every favor available to him, he pushed for a transfer, promising results, promising cooperation, promising answers. And eventually, he got approval. Robert Chop Top Sawyer was transferred to Rugsville and placed under his care.
And this is where it goes wrong. This is the project or the subject that Quayle had been looking for. I need this. He can feel it through the tapes. And this is like Netanyahu finding Donald Trump. An unhinged lunatic with delusions of grandeur. Give them what they want and you have a personal weapon. He looked at Chop Top the way the Sawyers saw Leatherface. Dangerous, but necessary. And if he's on your side, you're safe.
Yeah. From the moment they met, the dynamic shifted. Sawyer didn't resist. He didn't withdraw. He engaged. The two spent hours in what were labeled as psychiatric sessions, but quickly became something else. Conversations, shared ideas, and shared perspectives.
Yeah, that's not therapy. That's two lunatics comparing notes. Yeah. Crazy instantly recognized crazy, and they went to work.
Sawyer opened up completely. He told Quayle everything, details he had never shared in the Sawyer tapes. He told him the family wasn't finished, that Bubba was real, alive, and still out there somewhere in the woods.
And that right there is important, because for the longest time, people were sure Leatherface was a persona swap between the brothers, especially after Wilmer and W.E. died in 94 and Bubba just went missing. You know, this is finally validation that this was not the case. So now some people still say that Sawyer could be lying to Quayle at this point. Protecting the mystique of the Sawyer legacy and hinting that the family lived on in civilized society. But everything that's happened in Tennessee says different, and we'll talk about that in the next few weeks. And if he was going to lie about that, then why tell him about the next generation?
Yeah, because as you just pointed out, he also spoke about a child, Barbara Babi Sawyer, sired by Bubba and sent away before everything collapsed and hidden with extended family, but alive.
No, that's where Quayle really gets interested, because one subject is useful, two is a study. But the thing about the Sawyers that we're all about to learn is you can take the child out of the Sawyers, but you can't take the Sawyer out of the child. And this family is like a disease. Wherever they land, they infect that area. So placing Babi with the Wilsons didn't save her, it cursed them. Not that they had to be pushed very hard to go in that direction, you know?
Yeah. But Bubba was a dead end. Too much time had passed, too many unknowns, but Babi was traceable, she was accessible, and a chance to study the same bloodline but in a different environment. So nature versus nurture.
And that's the kind of thing that gets a man like Quayle excited. But like I just said, he's going to find out that the Sawyers are a force of nature unto themselves, and they nurture their surroundings to fall in line with their beliefs, not the other way around.
What he didn't realise was that the environment Babi had grown up in was not as far removed from the Sawyers as he believed.
Again, these were people already on the edge. They didn't need to be pushed. They just needed to be gently nudged.
Yeah. When Babi was pulled from the Sawyer house in 1990, she was 12 years old. 12. Raised in chaos, surrounded by killers, and with a father who was more monster than man. You'd assume anything would be an improvement from that.
Yeah, that's the trap though, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
People here rescued from the Sawyers and picture social workers, therapy, maybe a nice quiet foster home. She didn't get rescued. She got reassigned.
Exactly. Because she wasn't taken somewhere safe. She was taken to family, the Wilsons. So that was Wilhelmina Sawyer's bloodline.
Which already tells you everything you need to know. You don't get a Wilhelmina in the family tree without something rotten growing underneath.
Now, to be fair, at this point, they weren't the Sawyers. They weren't butchering people. They weren't building myths or rituals. They were smaller than that. Petty criminals involved in prostitution, robbery, stolen cars, and scrap dealing.
Yeah, they're not monsters, but they're circling it.
Nah.
Same ingredients, but at this point, lower ambition.
Yeah. And the family centered around Hugo Wilson, who was Wilhelmina's youngest brother. He never even met her, just heard stories.
Imagine that your introduction to your own bloodline is horror stories and rumors. But the horror isn't framed that way. It's framed as legacy, something to live up to idolize.
Yeah.
And just to kind of clarify what we meant by he never met Wilhelmina, just very, very, very quickly. I think you said that we were talking about beforehand. You see this in a lot of rural families in Ireland, especially, where like the families are so big and the generations can be so separated that by the time the youngest comes along, the eldest is going to happen to my family. I mean, I was the eldest. I lived with my youngest brother for 3 years before I was out of the house. Yeah. You know what I mean? So, in this case, I'm pretty sure if I do the maths right, I think Wilhelmina was dead by the time Hugo came along.
There's no hope of ever meeting her.
No. He just kind of heard about her through the legend.
And Hugo had a daughter, Gloria, and her life followed a very familiar pattern because by 14, she was already working as a prostitute.
14. That's not rebellion, that's environment, and it affects her mentally going forward.
Yeah.
Because if you are a 14-year-old sex dealer,
Sex
worker,
dealer. Same thing, I suppose.
you want some sex? I got it right here in my jacket. But if you're a 14-year-old sex worker, you're not dealing with regular Johns. You're dealing with pedophiles as a career.
Yep.
You know? And it stunts her mental growth, and we'll get into it later. But where she was the mother figure for Babi, she eventually kind of flips and starts looking up to Babi as an authority figure in herself and begins to mimic her theatrical approach to life. But again, that comes a little later.
Yeah. And first, she would try to get out of the life, and she did that by marrying a man named Earl Teasdale, who was a scrap dealer with mostly stolen cars. It was the kind of operation that sits just under the surface.
Yeah, the kind everyone knows about, but no one bothers dealing with it because it's easier just to ignore it than to fix it. Now, Earl must be a common name in Texas.
So.
We go from Earl Sawyer and the family he shaped to Earl Teasdale, and his actions would have a lot to do with the direction his family would take in the end as well.
And then they had 2 sons, Rufus and Tiny.
And here comes the part where history starts getting a bit too comfortable and repeating itself.
Yeah. So Tiny was born with gigantism, and Earl didn't see a son. He saw a problem.
Not even a problem, a future problem.
Yeah. He had heard the stories about Bubba, what the Sawyers became, and he convinced himself he was looking at the same thing all over again.
Without realising the Sawyers didn't end up with Bubba, they built him. He was seen as an asset, not a liability.
Exactly. Tiny showed no signs of violence, no aggression, and nothing to justify what Earl believed. But that didn't matter. On Tiny's 18th birthday, Earl made a decision.
And let me guess, it's one of those for the good of the family decisions.
Yeah, after the celebrations ended and everyone went to bed, he went down to the basement where Tiny slept, and he poured petrol across the room, across Tiny, and without realising it, across himself too.
No, to be fair, it's actually a really easy mistake to make.
Yeah.
If you're caught in the moment and you're not paying attention, especially if your only reference for this stuff is, stuff you've seen on TV. And as we learn as we go on, the Teasdales love television, specifically horror and Crash TV, which was really hitting its stride in the 90s. You know, like fucking Crash TV would have been its biggest in the 90s. Jerry Springer, fucking wild shit like that, you know.
Yeah.
So, yeah, you're not getting the greatest education here on how to do this shit.
So he lit the match and the fire spread instantly. The house went up and the family escaped. So Hugo, Gloria, Rufus all made it out.
But not Earl.
No, because just before the house collapsed, Tiny walked out, burning, with his skin melting and carrying Earl's body.
That's almost poetic, isn't it? The man, terrified of a monster, dies because of his own plans, and the so-called monster survives, and not just survives, but gets hurt worse trying to save the man who wanted him dead.
And from there, the family rebuilt. New house, same kind of isolation, same kind of lifestyle. Gloria went back to prostitution, and Rufus took over the scrap trade.
And Tiny?
Well, he lived, badly burnt, in constant pain, with no medical care and no treatment.
So, not saved, not healed, just kept.
Exactly. And then things shifted again because Gloria met someone new and not just another client.
Yeah, here we go. Johnny Lee Johns, better known as Captain Spaulding. Now, that's a personality entering the room. Former sideshow clown, ran a roadside horror attraction, a man who built his life around spectacle. And that's the first time this family gets some flavour. Before that, they're just surviving. Now, they're performing.
Yeah, and he and Gloria never fully settled into a traditional relationship, but he became part of the family, close enough to stay, but distant enough to move freely.
Yeah, he's not stepping into Earl's place. He's not Papa Spaulding at this point. It's like you see in comedies where the mom tells the kids that her lover is, Uncle John.
Yeah.
Close enough to be seen as family, not close enough to be seen as the head of the family or to be obligated to provide for him in any way, shape, or form.
Which means Gloria went back to work. Now, while Gloria had her 2 boys, she always wanted a daughter. But years of abortions from her sex work left her unable to have more children. So when Babi arrived, she didn't see a child. She saw an answer.
And Babi was welcomed instantly. Renamed on paper Vera Ellen Wilson after Gloria's mother, who we don't know a whole lot about, to be honest. There's fuck all records there. And again, the time it was at and the extreme isolation of where they lived. Hard to keep stuff like that on record. But in the house, she became Baby. It was an easier transition for the child to go from Babi to Baby rather than Babi to Vera Ellen. And Baby sounds softer, easier, and way more dangerous. No one fears a girl named Baby.
No. And Spaulding took to her immediately. He showed her his world, carnivals, oddities, performance, and she began to call him Daddy.
Yeah, that's not creepy at all.
Oh. So the family reshaped itself. Hugo as grandfather, Gloria and Spaulding as parents, Rufus, Tiny, and Baby, the kids, to make a family unit.
But Spaulding and Gloria still kept it loose and open. They were the ultimate friends with benefits, taking care of a family together, but still not tied to each other as a couple.
By the time Dr. S. Quentin Quayle reached out, Babi Sawyer was 18 years old, living in Rugsville and working as a stripper in a place called the Haunted Palace, a horror-themed grindhouse run by Velvet Von Black.
Horror-themed grindhouse themed.
Horror-themed grindhouse.
Yeah, but that doesn't make any sense, does it? I just wrote it wrong.
You did.
A horror grindhouse themed strip club. And right there, I mean, you can pause on that because that sentence alone tells you everything, doesn't it? Mm-hmm. You've got a girl raised by cannibals, rescued.
Yeah, in a loose sense.
And she ends up in a horror strip club run by someone called Velvet Von Black. That's not a coincidence. That's the universe going, no. Let's just stay on brand here. Keep it going.
Or it's just the only environment she knew how to function in.
Exactly. That's my point, though, isn't it? People think environment changes people overnight. It doesn't. It just reshapes what's already there. She didn't leave the horror behind. She just found a version of it with better lighting and a stage.
And unlike Gloria, who worked out of necessity, Baby enjoyed it, the attention and the control.
Yeah, Gloria survives, Baby performs, and that's a completely different psychology. One is, I need to get through this. The other is, watch me do this. Mm-hmm. But like I said earlier, maybe because she had been doing it so long and was trying to deal with the trauma, Gloria stopped acting like she was in survival mode and learned from Baby's example. She began to make her work more theatrical as well. And for the first time in her life, she began to enjoy what she did. And what Baby did best, what the family would really learn from the youngest member of the clan, was how to manipulate.
She would draw men in, flirt, play along, and let them think that they were in control of the situation.
Yeah. Disarm the mark by playing the ditzy blonde bimbo, then turn the tables when their guard is down.
She would take them somewhere private and let the situation escalate and then flip it. Weapon out, money gone, and the man left with a choice.
Yeah, report it and ruin your own life, or take the loss and keep your mouth shut. It's actually a very efficient system when you think about it.
Yeah, and most of them did stay quiet because exposure would cost them more than money.
Yeah, she knew how to pick them.
Yep.
Rugsville is a small rural town. Everyone knows everyone, so Baby knew who had a wife or a girlfriend at home, who had kids, who had a high-level job, and who couldn't afford the controversy, which means every time she gets away with it. And she's not just winning, she's learning.
And there were times, though, when it didn't go smoothly. There was violence, police involvement, but nothing ever really stuck.
And the reason for that is the same reason she was successful early on. Everyone knows everyone. So what once worked eventually doesn't.
No.
Locals know that if you pay for a lap dance from Baby inside the club, you're safe. But once talk of a second location comes into play, she was scheming and she had a reputation for ripping guys off or for being violent. So the locals would stop engaging with her for sex. meaning she had to move to the scam to travelers, passers-by that didn't know what she was capable of. But that brings more risk because this is the early days of the internet, no social media. What happened on the road stayed on the road. Her targets didn't have to worry about family or work finding out. They were soliciting, or finding out that they were soliciting the prostitute. And that meant they could fight back and deal with the police if necessary.
Yeah. But she always had Spaulding in the background ready to save her skin.
Yeah, and let's talk about that because people like to treat Spaulding like he's this quirky fucking clown character in the background. He's not. He's the infrastructure. He's the guy who knows who to call, who to pay, who to scare. He's the reason things disappear.
Yeah, so Baby grows up in this environment where crime works and where consequences don't land and where performance is rewarded.
And where the worst thing you can be is boring.
But the most important thing is this. She was not conflicted and she didn't struggle with who she was.
Why would she? From her perspective, she's not going down a dark path. She's stepping into a legacy.
Exactly, because growing up, she didn't hear horror stories about the Sawyers. She heard admiration.
Yeah, no one sat her down and said, your family were monsters. They said they were something special. That's a completely different foundation. Her father, her uncles, they weren't warnings, they were legends. And like I said earlier, once you frame it like that, you're not trying to avoid becoming them, you're trying to live up to them.
Which brings us to the moment everything changes.
Yeah, the worst phone calls you could possibly get.
Dr. Quayle reaching out and offering contact, connection with a man she'd only heard stories about.
Yeah, people need to understand Bubba was the legend, the propaganda story that the Sawyers fed to the world. But to people in the know, the twins were the real wild card of that family. Chop Top and Nubbins. I've often said it to you, it was their actions that really led to the downfall of the entire family. You'd think Baby would resent him for that, but all she had heard were stories praising him, building him into an almost godlike status in her mind. Her hero, which is not very ideal.
No, but it couldn't happen officially. Too many checks, too much scrutiny. But the system might be broken, but it's not that broken. So the meetings happened in secret, late at night in Quayle's office, under the cover of psychiatric sessions. At first, it was simple stories, connections, family history.
Yeah, the getting to know you phase.
Yeah.
Which in this family is probably already a bit intense.
Probably. But that didn't last because very quickly the conversation changed.
Of course it did. Because Chop Top isn't interested in reminiscing.
No.
He has been sitting in a box for over a decade. He's not looking backwards. He's talking about the future. And for him, there is only one version of that. Escape. Freedom. And not just getting out. He wants something bigger. He's looking to build, not just to survive. He wants to make a statement. Fuck the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. He wanted an all-American massacre. And now, for the first time, he's not just imagining it. He is building towards it.
So once the meetings between Robert Sawyer, Baby, and Dr. Quayle moved beyond stories and into intent, the next step came quickly. Because for Chop Top, there was no version of the future that involved staying inside those walls.
No, of course not. You don't spend over a decade fantasizing about the next big thing just to settle into arts and crafts in a padded room. Escape was always the end goal.
Yeah, and the plan they built was simple, brutal, and disturbingly effective. They needed a replacement. A body that would pass as Robert Sawyer. Someone that wouldn't miss, someone who wouldn't be questioned.
Yeah, not just a body with no one attached to it. And that's the trick. You're not hiding a death, you're replacing an identity.
The man they chose was a John Doe, an inmate suffering from severe dementia. No known family, no clear past, no one looking for him.
And that's about as invisible. I was about to say invisible as a person gets. That's the right word, invisible. Which is terrifying when you think about it because it means the system had already wrote this person off before Dr. Quayle had.
But before any of that could happen, Quayle had one more goal. He didn't just want Chop Top to escape, he wanted to improve him.
Of course he did. I mean, in his head, this isn't a breakout. This is proof of concept. it is his first real-world prototype to show what he is as a doctor is capable of.
Robert was still physically broken. Years of damage, pain, limited mobility. He was a shadow of what he had been.
Yeah, mentally he's back in business, but physically he's held together by spite and broken dreams.
Quayle began working on him, using techniques he had developed over years of experimentation. Procedures he had learned during his time abroad, unregulated, unverified, and largely undocumented.
Which is always comforting. When the man operating on your brain is basically going, don't worry, I picked this one up from a voodoo priest in Haiti that specializes in zombification.
What exactly he did remains unclear, but the results were not. Within weeks, Robert changed. The pain reduced, his strength returned, and his body stabilized.
Which does say one thing, a hot take, but the truth. Quayle obviously had some skills, some knowledge that our system refused to finance or embrace because, like him or not, he did fix the broken body of a man in his mid-50s that had accumulated multiple life-altering injuries.
He wasn't just restored, he was improved, stronger, more capable, and more dangerous.
Which is exactly what you don't want to do with someone like him. It's like fixing a broken weapon and sharpening it and handing it to a small child.
And it all happened quickly. Months of planning, weeks of physical work, and within 2 to 3 months, they were ready.
And that speed matters because the faster this happens, the less time there is for anyone to notice something's off.
The plan itself relied on misdirection. The official story would be simple. During a routine physical therapy session, Robert Sawyer would be attacked, beaten so severely that his body would be unrecognizable.
Which already tells you something. You're not trying to fake a clean death. They're leaning into chaos because chaos is harder to question, harder to put together afterwards.
Dental records would confirm the identity. That was the anchor and the proof.
And that's the clever part because no one's looking past the teeth. They don't lie, supposedly.
So Quayle removed Robert's teeth and the teeth of the chosen victim and prepared for what came next.
Which is where this goes from disturbing to properly grotesque.
The reality of what happened was very different from the official version. The John Doe was brought to the gym, led there by Quayle, walked him straight into it, didn't even need to hide it, and waiting inside was Robert, restored and ready.
And this is the first real glimpse of what Quayle had created. His patient, his subject, now complete and in full action mode.
Robert attacked him brutally, violently, reducing the man to something barely recognizable, and once it was done, Quayle stepped in and completed the final stage. He implanted Robert's teeth into the remains of the victim.
That's the detail that sells the whole thing, because once that's in place, the system does the rest for you. It's the old saying in the true crime world, you pick victims that the law have already written off. It's why sex workers, homeless and addicts are the first on the list for every budding serial killer. The cops won't stress on these people because they have no loved ones to keep the pressure on the system.
So the body was identified as Robert Sawyer, and the story held, and the deception worked. Meanwhile, the real Robert didn't stay. He couldn't, and as soon as the act was complete, he was moved.
Because the only way this works is if he disappears immediately.
Exactly. And Babi was waiting nearby, ready. And the moment the escape was complete, they left, crossing the border into Mexico.
It's a smart move because Texas is the first place everyone's going to look, if there's even a hint that this went wrong. They need distance, time, a chance for the story to settle, for the death to become fact. And once the world believes you're dead, you can become something entirely different.
And for Robert Sawyer, that was exactly the plan.
Because Chop Top doesn't come back from this. He's dead. And this is the birth of Otis B. Driftwood.
Mexico wasn't chosen at random. It wasn't just about getting out of Texas. It was intentional. Because for years, even while he was locked away, Robert had been studying cults, obsession-level studying. And one group in particular had stuck with him, the Driftwood Collective.
Yeah, and this is where it stops being escape and starts being kind of like a weird fucking cosplay, because he's not going to Mexico to hide. He's going to try on a lifestyle he's been fantasizing about for like 12 years.
The collective had been operating for years, a doomsday commune, loose structure, no real leadership, built on drugs, sex, ideology, and the idea of rejecting the outside world entirely.
Translation, no rules, no accountability, and just enough philosophy to make people feel like it's deeper than it actually is.
When Robert and Babi arrived, they didn't arrive as Sawyers. They arrived as something new, Otis and Bunny.
Yeah, and that right there is the first real break. It might as well be January 1st for Otis. New year, new me.
At first, it was everything he had imagined. Freedom, no walls, no restrictions, a constant cycle of drugs, sex, and celebration.
Yeah, turns out if you build your dream life entirely around no consequences, it feels amazing. Makes you wonder why we all don't live like that, huh? Every day is like the purge around this fucking guy.
He quickly formed a bond with another member of the collective, Winslow Foxworth Coltrane, known simply as Foxy.
Great name. Sounds like a man who absolutely cannot be trusted around anything valuable or alive.
Together, they became the enforcers within the group, handling problems, maintaining order, and if there was an issue, they dealt with it.
And this is where Otis starts getting comfortable again. Because now he's not surviving, he's operating. That's what he's been looking for.
But even with all of this, the freedom, the power, the lifestyle, it wasn't enough.
Of course it wasn't, because Chop Top didn't escape to relax. He escaped because he had something in his head he couldn't act on. That need, that creative urge, it never left him.
Members of the collective began to disappear quietly, one by one.
And not randomly. Let's not pretend this is some complete chaotic fucking thing. He's selecting at this point, careful at first. Those he considered weak, disposable, people who didn't contribute, people who didn't fit his vision, which is always how it starts. You justify it, they don't matter, they drag things down, you dress it up however you want. It's still the same instinct at the end of the day.
As they disappeared, Otis's influence grew because the collective had no leader, no hierarchy, just a group of like-minded people.
Which is basically an open invitation for someone like him.
Mm-hmm.
If there's no structure, the strongest personality becomes the structure.
Yeah, and Otis understood that. Manipulation came easily and control followed naturally.
He doesn't take over by force. He takes over by becoming necessary.
But someone else noticed the shift. Someone outside the collective. Aquarius Rivera, leader of the Black Satan's cartel. A group known for operating anonymously with tailored suits, luchador masks, no identities, and no faces.
And that's Brandon. That's what that is. A crime fucking family with a uniform.
The cartel had been using the collective for running guns, running drugs, not for profit, but for access.
Yeah, which is somehow worse. They don't even need the money. They just want space.
Yep, and they had cleared out a village, turned it into a base, and allowed the collective to live there as long as they served a purpose.
So the Free Love Commune is actually just a middleman for organised crime. Shocking.
Yeah, Otis didn't accept that. He saw it as control and as limitation because he doesn't want to be part of someone else's system. He wants to be the system. He told the collective to stop, to cut ties, and to end the relationship with the cartel.
Yeah, because that's always a good idea.
Yep.
It's an insane thing straight away to say. I mean, just for the record, you don't tell the cartel anything. They tell you.
No. And for the members of the collective, it created an impossible situation.
Yeah, pick a side. Follow Otis, unpredictable, violent, thinks he's an artist. Or defy a cartel, organised, violent, definitely not interested in negotiation. I mean, there's the definition right there of being stuck between a rock and a fucking hard place.
Yeah. And what followed is unclear. Details vary, accounts conflict, but what is known is the outcome. When it was over, the Black Satan's cartel was gone. The Driftwood collective destroyed. Only 3 remained: Otis, Babi, and Foxy.
Which is very telling, because after all that, he doesn't have a following, he doesn't have a movement, he has 2 people. And I think this is the beginning of him realizing as well, or realizing less is more in terms of followers. Not that it'll stop him trying to recruit again later, but at this point, like I said, he's realizing you really need to keep the people you trust close and eliminate anybody who could be any slight bit of a risk to you.
Exactly. So this all unfolded over the course of a year, the first year of his freedom. And back in America, the story had held.
Yeah, officially, he's dead. Paperwork says so. And paperwork apparently is all it takes.
Rugsville was no longer watching for him, no longer expecting him. It was safe.
Safe is relative, but yeah, safer than Mexico, where he just wiped out 2 organizations.
Yeah. Foxy chose to stay. He had ambitions of rebuilding what the cartel had left behind. But Otis had no interest in staying because through everything, through the conversations with Babi, he had realised something.
Yeah, the thing he went looking for, he already had it. Back home, a family, people who admired him, people who believed in the legacy were waiting, which is what he actually wanted the whole time. Not freedom, not Mexico.
So the decision was made. They would return, but not as Sawyers because that part's done.
Yeah, Robert Sawyer was dead. Chop Top was gone. This is the clean break. No going back. No slipping into old identities when it suits him. From this point forward, he will be known as Otis B. Driftwood. Can't prove this, but I've heard the B stands for Bubba as a little fucking homage to the one fucking member that was still running around out there that he couldn't find. And it's not just a name change either. It's a mission statement.
Because what he planned to build would be different. The Sawyers were built on survival, on ritual, on secrecy. Otis didn't want to hide. He wants to be seen. His version would be built on art, on spectacle, on forcing people to look at what they tried to ignore.
Yeah, he's not dragging people into the dark. He's turning on the lights and saying, look at this! A new family, a new identity, a new legacy, and this one's louder.
So he left Mexico and began the journey home. And just before he did, he said something that would define everything that came next.
My Fireflys will light the way. And unlike everything else he said, that one actually stuck.
When Otis and Babi returned to Rugsville, they weren't sneaking back. They weren't hiding. They arrived to a welcome.
Yeah. This is mad. It's mad when you think about it. The man fakes his death, disappears for a year, comes back with a new name and a body count somewhere in Mexico, and the reaction is basically a hero's welcome.
Because to that family, he wasn't a fugitive. He was legacy. He's not the problem. He's the upgrade. Hugo saw it as a way to honour his sister, to finally live up to the stories he had spent his life hearing. Spalding saw opportunity, a chance to attach himself to something bigger, something that stretched beyond roadside attractions and small-time crime.
Yeah, Spalding's not stupid.
No.
He knows exactly what this is. He's stepping into something with history, something with weight.
And Gloria saw something else entirely, a way out, not physically, but socially.
Yeah, she doesn't want to stop being what she is. She just wants it to mean something.
Rufus and Tiny didn't care. They followed orders they always had. And now the orders were coming from Otis.
Which, in that kind of family, is all you need. You don't question leadership. You just adapt to it.
Yeah. And Otis wasted no time. He stepped in and immediately began assigning roles. Hugo became Grandpa Firefly. Gloria was Mother Firefly. And Captain Spalding, Cutter Firefly.
Yeah. This is, there it is again, isn't it? You know? It's the same skeleton. It's different skin. The rest kept their names, but the family name changed. Everything became Firefly, which was clever because it sounds lighter, almost playful until you realise what's actually happening underneath.
Yeah, the structure mirrored something that we've already seen. A family unit, defined roles, clear hierarchy.
Yeah, it's Vilmer all over again. He thinks he's building something new, but he's just repeating the Sawyer blueprint. But the philosophy, that's where things change, because this is where he starts to believe his own hype. The Sawyers used flesh for survival, for sustenance. Otis didn't need that. He's past survival.
Mm-hmm.
He's into expression now.
Nice. So to him, flesh became material, a resource, not to consume, but to create.
Which is a very polite way of saying he turned murder into a hobby with a theme.
His thinking had evolved through studying figures like Charles Manson and others like him. He developed a deep resentment for structured society.
Yeah, but here's the irony. He thinks he's rejecting society, but he's built his entire identity based on reacting to it. Because unlike his upbringing with the Sawyers, he is now seen more of the world. He understood more of it, or at least enough to think he understood it. The rise of accessible information, the spread of ideas, the internet creeping in, people talking more, sharing more. Suddenly, the world feels smaller, and he doesn't like what he sees in it.
He no longer saw himself as an outlier. In his head, he's not the problem anymore. He is the honest one. So instead of confronting society directly, he chose something else.
Yeah, because confronting it means risking failure, building your own version. That's control.
He would create his own world, a world of horror, of spectacle, of confrontation, not hiding in the dark like the Sawyers, dragging people into the light and forcing them to look. And the plan, at least at first, was recruitment.
This is where it gets properly delusional. He didn't want followers who already agreed with him. No, that's too easy. He wanted to convert people. Nothing says you'll see things my way like kidnap and torture.
Victims would be abducted, held, broken down, re-educated. And if they changed, they could join. But if they didn't, they became part of something else.
Yeah. Art or entertainment, depending on the day and whether you ended up in Otis's workshop or Baby's playhouse.
Otis would work in isolation in his workshops, leaving Baby to handle the day-to-day.
Which is where it gets really dangerous, because she's not just participating, she's learning. She brought in victims, managed the family, followed Otis's orders, and enjoyed it. Let's not dance around that part. She loved what she was doing.
Yeah, she was being shaped and prepared.
He's building a successor.
But the plan didn't work.
Of course it didn't, because brainwashing requires patience. And this family has the emotional control of a lit match in a petrol station.
Yeah, victims didn't convert. They broke or they died.
Usually both.
Mm-hmm.
So the idea was abandoned, not because it was wrong, but because it was inconvenient.
And from that point on, there was no recruitment, just consumption. Different forms, same outcome. Everyone became either material or a toy.
But he still gives the speeches. That's the best part. The ideology never left. He still thinks he's saying something profound while actively undermining his own message every 5 fucking minutes.
And over time, something else became clear. This was not the same Chop Top.
No, not at all. Not even close. He was angrier, colder, more calculated, less chaotic, more deliberate.
It's believed this shift came from Quayle's work. The impulsive, erratic nature was still there, but now it had direction, and he had become something more complete.
Yeah, Quayle didn't create something new. He refined what was already there, you know?
Yeah, a monster fully realized.
And then there's the other side of it, I suppose. I mean, the ideas you have in your 20s can be vastly different from the way you deal with things in your 50s.
That's true.
You know, so for lack of a better word, he matured slightly.
I suppose he did.
And that's the worst part, really, isn't it? He thinks he is the most evolved version of the original family.
Yeah.
He's got it in his head that he is peak Sawyer at this point.
But as this new version of the family began to take shape, something else was happening, because Dr. Quayle was about to come under scrutiny. Dr. S. Quentin Quayle believed he had done it. After years of failed experiments, years of theory, he finally had proof. Robert Chop Top Sawyer was gone, and in his place stood Otis Driftwood.
Yeah, in his head, that was a success story. Which is insane when you say it out loud. He took a violent lunatic and turned him into something more focused, more capable, more dangerous, and went, perfect, nailed it. To Quayle, this was validation. His life worked, realized. His life's work realized. Why can't I say work? Why am I keep saying worked? His life's work realized.
Good job.
Yeah, got it. Nailed it. You just edit it there. Everyone got that?
Thank you for listening to this episode.
But here's the problem. He doesn't understand that what he's made is... It's not a sword. He thinks he's created a weapon. he doesn't understand that he hasn't created a soldier.
Yeah.
He created a leader, and that is much harder to control.
Yeah. Either way, Otis Driftwood became the culmination of everything Quayle had worked toward. And with that perceived success came ambition.
Yeah, this is where it always goes wrong. The first success doesn't slow them down. It convinces them they've cracked the code. Quayle pushes further, harder, faster, and sloppier. That's the part people skip.
The experiments escalated. More subjects, less caution. Gone were the days of working on untraceable inmates and people with no connections.
Yeah, and no one will notice phase is over.
Yep.
No, it's just we'll deal with it if they do. Anyone becomes viable. Any patient becomes a subject, which is when it stops being experimentation and starts being open abuse.
Families began to notice, to question and to push back.
And when people start asking, where is he or why hasn't she been seen, that's when the system starts cracking.
Investigations followed, slow and ineffective.
Of course they were, because the system that allowed this to happen is now investigating itself, and that never ends quickly.
Yeah, and by April 2003, more than 20 inmates were unaccounted for.
20.
Mm-hmm.
That's not a mistake. That's a pattern everyone ignored until it was too obvious to ignore.
Absolutely.
And the people of Rugsville had enough, and this is where it flips, because now it's not about law anymore, it's about anger.
On April the 11th, 2003, a mob formed with locals, families, people who felt the system had failed them.
Which, to be fair, it had.
Yeah, and their goal was simple: justice.
Yeah, no, not justice. Let's call it what it is here. It's revenge.
Yeah. And that night, Quayle was at home, suspended and awaiting investigation. The mob descended on his house and pulled him out, beat him, restrained him, and dragged him into the woods.
And this is the part people like to romanticize. Community justice. No, this is a group of people deciding they don't trust the system and becoming something worse.
They tied a noose to a tree and they hanged him. No trial, no defense, no delay, just done. And when it was over, they left him there, a warning and a statement.
And then they do what mobs do best. They disappear. No one spoke. No one came forward. The town closed ranks. Because once you're all guilty, you're all protected. Which, ironically, is a play straight out of Otis's favourite monsters book, Charles Manson.
When the authorities arrived the next morning, there was nothing. No body, no rope, no sign of what had happened.
And that's the moment everything changes, because no, this is not a crime anymore. It's a story. With no physical evidence, there is nothing to prosecute, nothing to prove. If there's no body, officially there's no murder. And Quayle was known to go abroad. He was known to study abroad, as we said. So it made perfect sense for him to, especially under investigation, to go missing. So why would they bother investigating?
Exactly. But something else had been created. And this is where reality loses control of the narrative, because with the disappearance of S. Quentin Quayle, Dr. Satan is born.
Awesome.
A name, a rumor, a legend.
And legends are way more useful than facts.
It's believed that when Otis heard about the lynching, he saw opportunity immediately. He sent the Firefly family to... Firefly family. It's really hard because there's a lot of F's and a lot of L's.
Just say the Fireflies. We all know what
He
you're talking
sent the
about.
Fireflies to retrieve the body, to clean the scene, and to erase anything that tied the story to reality.
Because again, hold on. There we go. There I am. Hi, everybody. Because there's no evidence, you can replace it with whatever you want. From that point on, Dr. Satan wasn't a man, he was a myth. A story tied to Rugsville, just like the Sawyers were tied to Nuke County. A presence, something whispered about, something feared, and more importantly, something that explains things.
Exactly, because when something terrible happens, people need a reason.
And a supernatural butcher doctor living underground is somehow easier to accept than a family of real people doing very real things.
Yeah. And Otis understood that, and he weaponized it. He used the legend to hide in plain sight and to mask the Firefly's actions.
Because if people are looking for a monster in the dark, they're not looking for one standing right in front of them.
And just like that, Rugsville had its own horror story. Only this one was being written in real time, and the truth behind it was far worse than the myth. At this point, it's worth taking a step back because the Fireflys, they're now fully formed, and not in theory, not in ambition, but in practice.
Yeah, this is it. This is the version that actually exists, not the one Otis is thinking he's building, but, you know.
Yeah. The original idea was clear. Build something to rival the likes of Charles Manson. A family, a movement, a following, but that never materialized.
Because here's the flaw in his plan. You can't build a cult if you keep killing the recruits.
Exactly. And no one ever made it through the process. No one was broken down and rebuilt. They didn't fail the process killed them. So what remained was the core of the family. Otis B. Driftwood at the top and Babi just beneath him.
And that dynamic is important because she's not just second in command. She's learning to rule.
Mama Firefly handled the basics, cooking and maintaining the household.
Yeah, every nightmare still needs someone keeping it and running.
Sure does. Grandpa Hugo acted as the historian, the link to the past.
Which is ironic because he's preserving stories he never actually lived through. Tiny and Rufus served as muscle, enforcement, simple, direct, effective.
Firefly, or Captain Spaulding, operated more independently, handling transport, movement between the US and Mexico, working closely with Foxy.
Yeah, Spaulding, the logistics guy, right? Which might be the most important role in the whole operation. Foxy remained in Mexico, but aligned himself with the Firefly identity. That's the reach, and that's how things stretch beyond one location.
And then there was one more, Ravelli Keys, a man with severe learning difficulties, used primarily as muscle and working under Spaulding.
Which tells you everything about how this family operates. It's not just outsiders they exploit, it's anyone vulnerable enough to be shaped into use.
Yeah, and he worked around Spaulding's roadside businesses, Captain Spaulding's Museum of Monsters and Madmen, and the gas and fried chicken shop.
Great combination. I'm definitely buying my fucking fried chicken
At a
and
gas.
petrol at the same place that I go to look at.
There are
fucking
two different
serial killer
locations,
footage.
obviously. You can't go to the museum with a handful of fried chicken, can you?
No, have you not seen the ads?
Oh, you can. You can go into
No,
the
no,
museum.
no. When you leave, you get a complimentary bag of fried chicken.
Oh, so you go to the museum first and then you get your chicken.
So from what I've seen from pictures and the layout of the place, it's essentially a petrol station
Yeah.
on the outside.
Okay.
Then you go inside and there's like this weird kind of fucking oddities style gift shop
Okay.
where you can also buy fried chicken.
It's a lot of
And
fried
then
chicken.
around the back, you have the House of Horrors, the house of, or the Museum of Madmen and fucking serial killers that
Okay.
runs there. So and this is apparently a normal thing in America. Roadside attractions, oddity attractions.
I knew oddity
you know.
attractions were. I'd love to run
Carnival
like an
attractions,
oddity attraction,
that.
but I think I'd be careful about what I was putting under the one roof.
Yeah. Again, I'm not eating my chicken from the same place that I buy
If
my
it even
petrol
is
and
chicken.
Look at it, and look at fucking serial killer stuff.
Yeah.
You know? Yeah. Instantly, if some guy's telling me about Ed Gein, I don't want to have these chicken afterwards.
No.
So yeah. So yeah, like I said, despite what we think about it, it is a perfect front. You know, I mean, tourists come in looking for a laugh and walk straight into something else entirely.
A restaurant. So while the structure looked complete, the original dream was gone.
The army idea was dead. No cult, no movement, just a family doing what it does best. And you know what? To give Captain Spaulding fucking some bit of fucking
Credit.
Yeah. I've eaten hot dogs from petrol stations many a times. I've eaten food. I mean, once you have a fine deli, you kind of get over
Yeah,
it.
the deli's
but
grand. It's just the fried chicken only part is a bit suspect.
And I've seen pictures of fucking Captain Spaulding. I don't think the dude would have had a great health inspecting rating.
Yikes.
You know what I mean? Well, anyway, sorry. Back to what we're talking about. The cult is gone. The movement isn't happening. But we got a family, and that'll do for now.
And Otis adjusted. didn't abandon the vision, just changed angle, and his focus shifted fully from recruitment to creation.
And this is where he really starts buying into himself. He believed that what he was doing was art. And of course he did. Every one of these lads think they're misunderstood artists. No one ever goes, I'm just a horrible fucking bastard. He saw himself as ahead of his time, which is convenient because it means no one can criticize you. They just don't get it yet, man.
His goal became clear: to build something lasting, something that would outlive him.
Legacy! That's always the word we land on.
He began work on what he envisioned as a house of horrors.
And not the fun kind where you walk through the little maze and someone jumps out with a plastic chainsaw roaring at you. This would be real, built from real victims, real bodies. This isn't themed entertainment. This is documentation of what they've done.
He chose the location carefully, abandoned mines nearby.
But you'd think the mines would give this guy PTSD after the 86
Yeah.
incident. It got him locked up for many years and caused a lot of terrible accidents to put him in a lot of fucking pain.
That's true, but he had learned years earlier in Texas Battleland, mines are easy to navigate if you know them.
Yeah, and a nightmare if you don't,
Yep.
which is exactly what you want. It gave him control, structure, secrecy, and more importantly, time.
So he wanted it ready for Halloween.
Of course he fucking did. Because even when he's being horrific, he's still thinking theatrically.
And with the death of Quayle that pushed him, it accelerated everything because now he's not just creating, he's reacting. With roughly 6 months, he began gathering materials.
And when we say materials,
Bodies from graves, from victims, mostly drifters, homeless, people no one would immediately miss, people who could disappear.
and that's constantly the trade through all this. Not randomness, but selection. I think that's the trade throughout all the fucking Sawyer discussions that we've had. They're great at selection for a period of time, and every time they drop selection for randomness is when things go to fucking shit for them.
Yeah. And as the collection grew, so did the scale. The house began to take shape, not as a home, but as a statement, a place where everything he believed would be put on display. So when Otis began building his house of horrors, he wasn't careless, he wasn't reckless. He had learned from the past.
Yeah, specifically, he had learned from his brother getting caught robbing graves back in 73. Because nothing screams, investigate me, like digging up half the local cemetery.
Exactly. He knew that after everything that happened in Rugsville, after the disappearance of Dr. Satan, that the community was already on edge.
Yeah, the town's not exactly relaxed at this point.
Nope.
You don't get a missing mad doctor and just go back to normal. So instead of disturbing local graves, he adapted, which is the running theme here. He's not smarter than the Sawyers. He's just applying the same logic with a bit more awareness.
Yeah. So fresh bodies were sourced elsewhere. Rufus and Tiny were sent further out, away from Rugsville, which spreads the problem. Instead of one town noticing that something's off, now it's multiple places missing pieces of the puzzle. For older remains, bones were taken from an abandoned graveyard near the mine.
Yeah, because it's not, well, you know, if no one's maintaining the graveyard, no one's counting the bodies inside there. This is like an ancient graveyard.
Oh, yeah.
Old.
Yeah. Over 6 months, the mines were transformed. What had once been empty tunnels became something else entirely. Rooms were constructed, designed, each one themed.
Not randomly either. He's pulling from history, from real violence. Scenes inspired by murders, atrocities, moments of brutality. This is where he learns, where he really leans into the artist label. You know, he's curating now.
Mm-hmm.
At least in his own mind, that's what he's trying to do. What he thinks he's doing. From what it sounds like to me, just sounds like he took Captain Spaulding's idea and made it more realistic.
More real.
More time and effort into it.
Corpses were used as props, bodies were turned into puppets, arranged and displayed. And
again, he does like turning bodies into puppets. We know that.
He does.
He's not hiding what he's done. He is staging it as well. You know, this is feels like it's for the public. He doesn't feel like he's planning on hiding this.
Costumes were created, designed to amplify fear, because it's not enough to kill someone. They need to understand what's happening to them while it's happening. Even rituals were written, scripts, moments, set pieces.
That's the theater side again. He's not just committing acts, he's directing them. To Otis, this wasn't random violence. In his head, this was his masterpiece, his greatest work. Something that would cement his place in history. Not just another killer. He wants to be the name, the one people reference, the figure remembered, studied, admired. But the world had changed, and this is the bit that he doesn't fully account for.
Yeah, this wasn't 1973 anymore. You don't get to disappear people quietly anymore. Information moved faster, news cycles ran constantly, and even in rural areas, people talk. Disappearances were noticed, patterns formed.
Yeah, you can't just rely on, they probably ran off anymore. That excuse has a shelf life now.
Yeah, but despite that, he keeps going through 2003, into 2004, and into 2005. The killings continued.
Because once this thing starts, it doesn't scale down. It escalates. The all-American massacre, which he promised years earlier, it was no longer an idea. It was now in full motion.
Victims came and went, and mostly unnoticed individually. But collectively, that's where it builds. Like the house expanded, the work continued.
And so does the ego, because every time he gets away with it, it reinforces the belief that he's untouchable.
Until eventually, it catches up. In the spring of 2005, the Firefly family's run came to an end, violently, in a hail of bullets, and a level of brutality that matched everything that came before it. But before that moment comes the carnage of what he's been building towards this entire episode. His House of Horrors, or as he christened it himself, the House of 1,000 Corpses.
But we're going to leave all the carnage to next week. Or for people who know, 2 days' time. Yeah. When the Fireflys fall into the same trap the Sawyers had so many times before them, hunting too close to home and eventually abducting people who would be missed and killing people that could not be hidden and forgotten. Whew.
High five.
Not a bad opening, huh?
Yeah, good job.
So yeah, if you want more, especially more about Charles Manson, then go check out the Horrorverse Network right now. We have It's Alive Action up there, where we're looking at Charles Manson, and then we go on a bit of a run at looking at a great movie maker by the name of Rob Zombie. No connection to the story whatsoever. A great musician, great movie maker. Go check that out. We dissect all his movies over a 3-week period. Yep. We also have the current season of Celebrity Rap Sheet playing at the moment, where I look at different comedians this season and their rise and fall. And just to let you know, they're all tearjerkers. You're not going to like it. You will like it, but you'll be sad afterwards. Yeah. It's hard not to be sad after those stories. We also have all the seasons of Playing with Bones, all the episodes of Mini Monsters, It's Alive Action, your photo shoots, everything. It's all up there on the Horrorverse Network. It's $5 a month, 7-day free trial. Go check it out now. And every Monday, Amy Rose is on Twitch. We're playing Slay with Amy Rose. And what's the handle? Amy Rose 9.
Amy Rose 9.
And that is 10 to 12 every Monday. Check it out.
Irish time.
We'll be back next week with more tales from the Horrorverse. See you all then. Same Alive time, same Horrorverse channel. Okay, love ya. Bye-bye.